Violent crime is on the rise in the U.S.
You think small towns are safe. One blinking traffic light, one diner, one cop who knows your name. But then the data shows up, and suddenly that quick gas stop comes with odds nobody mentioned. Here's the problem. We're trained to fear big cities until tiny towns start posting crime rates that don't make sense. Surprisingly, some of the quietest places on the map hit harder than cities 10 times their size. Tonight, we're counting down U.S. small towns where newcomers show up relaxed and leave educated. What nobody tells you is why these numbers spike, or which town quietly tops the list. Would you stop for gas here or keep driving? Like the video if this ruins your road trip optimism. Subscribe. Consider it a low-cost survival habit. Wait till you see number 1. Let's break it down. Number 10. Calvert, Texas. If I told you one of Texas's highest burglary rates lives in a town with 2 stop signs and a population under 1,000, you'd laugh until you drove through Calvert. On the surface, it's postcard Texas. Brick storefronts, antique shops, a downtown that looks like it retired peacefully in 1958. This is the kind of place where you expect porch swings and slow conversations, not police blotters. Calvert feels frozen in time. Cheap homes, quiet nights. The pitch is simple. Nothing happens here. But then, the numbers show up. Here's the turn. Calvert has posted one of the highest burglary rates in Texas on a per capita basis. Not total incidents, rate. Translation: a handful of break-ins divided by a very small population creates a stat that punches way above its weight. Real data points that catch newcomers off guard. Population: approximately 1,000 residents. Blink, and you've counted them all. Home prices, often well below the Texas average, sometimes under 6 figures. Violent crime, relatively low. This isn't chaos. Property crime, that's where it spikes. Burglaries, thefts, opportunistic crime. Job market, limited. Most people commute or already have roots. Surprisingly, it's not about danger, it's about visibility. Empty homes, weekend traffic, outsiders passing through. When everyone knows everyone, anything unfamiliar stands out. What nobody tells you is that small towns don't hide crime, they magnify it statistically. Emotionally, that messes with people. You move here for peace, lower bills, space to breathe, but then you start locking doors you never locked before. You notice which houses are empty. You stop assuming quiet means safe. Financially, it's a mixed bag. Low cost of living keeps people in. Property crime keeps insurance premiums awkward. Pride stays intact, but trust gets selective. And here's the irony. Calvert isn't spiraling. It's just honest math in a tiny denominator. A few bad decisions echo louder when the town is this small. Yeah, your mortgage is cheap, but congratulations, you now own the most statistically exciting shed in Texas. Also, can we talk about small town lighting? Everything's either pitch black or stadium bright. There's no in between. You're either sneaking through shadows or getting interrogated by a street lamp like it's a prison movie. Pick a lane, Calvert. I just wanted tacos, not a psychological evaluation. And if you think Calvert's numbers feel strange, wait until you see the next town, because that one looks safer, sounds nicer, and somehow hits harder. Number 9. Sauk Village, Illinois. Sauk Village looks like a place you move to escape problems. Tree-lined streets, ranch houses, a quiet Chicago suburb where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. You mow your lawn, you wave at neighbors, you assume the danger stayed downtown. That's the expectation. But Sauk Village didn't get the memo. Here's where the story snaps. Sauk Village, population roughly 9,500, has posted violent crime rates north of 5,000 per 100,000 residents in certain recent years. That's not a little high, that's national outlier territory. Some grounding data. Violent crime rate, 5 to 6 times the national average at its peak. Cost of living, below Illinois average. Housing is relatively affordable. Median rent, cheaper than Chicago, but not cheap enough to justify constant vigilance. Job market, many residents commute, local employment options are thin. Quality of life, wildly uneven block by block. Surprisingly, this isn't random chaos, it's concentrated. Long-standing economic stress, underfunded services, a town stuck between suburban identity and urban-level problems. And that tension? You feel it immediately. Nothing like paying suburban prices for city-grade stress. Great deal. Living here messes with your instincts. You don't fear strangers. You memorize patterns. Which streets feel normal? Which ones empty too early? Which gas stations are fine until the sun dips? Financially, affordability pulls people in. Crime pushes them to leave. That churn breaks trust. And once trust erodes, numbers climb faster than rent ever did. Sauk Village isn't a punchline. It's a warning label, a reminder that proximity to opportunity doesn't guarantee access to it. Also, why does every suburb like this have the same plaza? One dollar store, one nail salon, one pizza place that's temporarily closed for 6 years. It's like urban planning gave up halfway through the sentence. You can't build community out of abandoned signage and hope. Quick vote, yes or no? Would you rather live somewhere cheap but tense, or expensive but predictable? Drop it in the comments. Number 8. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis has a reputation that shows up before you do. Cross the river, skyline behind you, and suddenly the streets feel quieter. Too quiet. Old brick buildings, empty lots, a city that once mattered a lot, now treated like a cautionary tale you're not supposed to stare at too long. The expectation? Decline, danger, disappointment. But the real story is sharper and sadder than the stereotype. Let's get precise. East St. Louis has recorded violent crime rates around 3,500 to 3,700 per 100,000 residents in recent years. That's several times the national average, and high enough to put it in the same statistical conversation as cities 10 times its size. Other grounding realities. Population, under 20,000, down massively from its peak. Cost of living, well below national average. Housing can be shockingly cheap. Median rent, low, but availability doesn't equal demand. Job market, limited locally. Many commute or don't have that option. Quality of life, inconsistent. Some blocks are stable, others feel abandoned. Surprisingly, the violence isn't random. It clusters. It follows vacancy, disinvestment, and the long shadow of industry leaving town without a goodbye note. When houses cost less than used cars, the math starts asking uncomfortable questions. Living here rewires your expectations. You don't measure safety by crime stats. You measure it by time of day, familiarity, and whether a block feels claimed. Emotionally, that's exhausting. Financially, it traps people. Low costs pull you in. Limited opportunity keeps you stuck. And here's the part nobody likes admitting. East St. Louis didn't fail on its own. It was outlived by the economy that built it. Remember Calvert's statistically exciting shed? Yeah, this is what happens when the shed turns into a whole city. Quick pause. East St. Louis once had one of the busiest rail and industrial hubs in America. This place didn't start broken. It was built loud, proud, and essential, then quietly unplugged. Okay, back to reality. Also, can someone explain why every GPS acts surprised you're here? You have arrived. Are you sure? Yes, Siri, I'm sure. Stop judging me like I made a personal mistake. And if you think East St. Louis is intense, the next town doesn't look abandoned at all, which makes its numbers even harder to explain. Number 7. Bessemer, Alabama. Bessemer sells itself like a southern comeback story. Old steel town, blue-collar roots, affordable homes. The kind of place where people say, it's got good bones. You're close to Birmingham, far from big city prices, and the vibe says working-class pride, not danger. That's the expectation. But then the math clears its throat. Here's what newcomers don't expect. Bessemer has posted violent crime rates hovering around 1,900 to 2,000 per 100,000 residents in recent years. That's 5 times the national average. Not a spike, a pattern. Some grounding numbers. Population, approximately 27,000. Big enough to matter, small enough to feel it. Cost of living, well below US average. Housing is cheap, sometimes suspiciously so. Median rent, affordable, especially compared to Birmingham suburbs. Job market, limited locally. Many residents commute north. Quality of life, uneven. Quiet neighborhoods exist, but they're stitched together by tension. Surprisingly, this isn't chaos, it's compression. Economic decline, limited opportunity, and proximity to a metro area without fully sharing in its growth. You save on rent, but apparently pay in adrenaline. Living in Bessemer trains you to notice contrast. One street feels normal, the next feels off. Emotionally, that keeps people guarded. Financially, it freezes mobility. Cheap housing locks people in place, even when opportunity moves on without them. Here's the irony. Bessemer isn't the most dangerous place in Alabama, but it's one of the most misjudged. It looks like a bargain until you price in stress. Alabama has towns where doors stay unlocked, and then there's Bessemer, where affordability and anxiety share a zip code. Also, Alabama weather? Pick a personality. It's either 95 degrees with emotional humidity or a thunderstorm that feels personally offended by your existence. You're not going for a walk, you're negotiating with the atmosphere. And if Bessemer feels intense for its size, the next town is smaller, quieter, and somehow manages to make these numbers look polite. Number 6. Saginaw, Michigan. Saginaw feels like a place America forgot mid-sentence. Brick houses, wide streets, a river that used to mean jobs. You hear Michigan and think lakes, trucks, and grit. But not this. Not danger. Not volatility. This feels like a town that should be tired, not tense. That's the expectation. But Saginaw has a way of correcting you. Here's the turn. Saginaw's violent crime rate has hovered around 1,700 per 100,000 residents in recent years. That's 4 to 5 times the national average, and wildly high for a city of about 44,000 people. Some grounding reality. Cost of living, well below the US average. Cheap enough to lure people back. Median home prices, low, but appreciation is slow and uneven. Median rent, affordable, but vacancy is high in certain neighborhoods. Job market, fragile. Manufacturing scars run deep. Quality of life, block by block roulette. One street stable, the next quietly empty. Surprisingly, this isn't random violence, it's concentrated. It follows abandonment like a shadow. When industry left, it didn't just take jobs, it took momentum. You save money fast, then spend it on stress. Living in Saginaw sharpens your awareness. You listen more, you scan more. You learn the rhythm of the city, not the map, the pattern. Emotionally, that builds resilience, or exhaustion, sometimes both. Financially, the low costs feel like opportunity until the job options dry up. Then affordability becomes gravity, hard to escape, harder to ignore. Saginaw isn't broken, it's paused, caught between what it was and what it hasn't become yet. Also, Michigan winters deserve their own crime category. Gray skies, wind that cuts sideways, snow that shows up uninvited and overstays. Seasonal depression isn't a mood here, it's a lifestyle subscription you didn't cancel. Picture this, you're driving home at dusk, radio low, snow squeaking under the tires. One porch light flicks on, another stays dark. The city feels quiet, but not empty, just waiting to see who's still paying attention. And if Saginaw feels heavy, the next town somehow makes smaller feel riskier. This next place doesn't look dangerous at all, which is exactly the problem. Number 5. Anniston, Alabama. Anniston looks like a place that should calm you down. Mountains in the distance, old southern charm, brick homes that feel settled, not stressed. It was built on industry, survived the wars, and now sells itself as quiet, affordable, and out of the way. You expect slow days, cheap living, familiar faces. You don't expect to double-check the data. Here's the part newcomers miss. Anniston has logged violent crime rates hovering around 1,200 to 1,400 per 100,000 residents in recent years. That's roughly 3 times the national average, high enough to quietly rattle expectations. Some grounding facts. Population, approximately 21,000. Small, but not sleepy. Cost of living, well below the US average. That's the hook. Median home prices, affordable, often shockingly so. Job market, limited growth. Healthcare and service jobs dominate. Quality of life, calm on paper, tense in practice, very neighborhood-specific. Surprisingly, Anniston's crime story isn't explosive, it's persistent. The kind that settles in when opportunity leaves and never fully comes back. Great hiking views, questionable crime graphs. Living in Anniston teaches contrast. One part of town feels anchored, another feels overlooked. Emotionally, that creates caution. Financially, the low costs feel like freedom until they become the reason people stay put. Here's the irony. Anniston isn't loud about its problems. It's polite, and polite problems linger longer. Alabama has towns where nothing ever happens, and Anniston, where enough happens that you start counting exits. Also, why does every southern small city have the same historic downtown that closes at 5 p.m.? Congratulations, you preserved it so well no one's allowed to use it. It's not charming if it's empty. Picture it, you're driving home at dusk, windows down, cicadas loud. The town feels peaceful until you realize the quiet isn't relaxation, it's vigilance with better manners. Be honest, yes or no, would you trade lower rent for higher awareness? Drop it below. Number 4. Osceola, Arkansas. Osceola feels like a place you pass through slowly. Flat land, long roads, grain silos, and pickup trucks doing their best impression of stillness. This is rural Arkansas. Quiet, inexpensive, and so low-key it barely feels like a dot on the map. You expect boredom. You expect safety. You don't expect statistics that make you blink. Here's where the illusion cracks. Osceola, population roughly 7,000, has posted violent crime rates well above the national average, sometimes landing north of 1,500 per 100,000 residents in recent years. In a town this small, that's not noise, that's signal. Some grounding data. Cost of living, far below the US average. That's the selling point. Median home prices, cheap enough to feel unreal. Median rent, low, but options are limited. Job market, thin. Agriculture and small local employers dominate. Quality of life, calm on the surface, fragile underneath. Surprisingly, the issue isn't constant violence, it's concentration. A few incidents swing the entire town's reality. In small places, there's no buffer, when one bad week becomes a whole year's reputation. Living in Osceola recalibrates your sense of scale. Everyone knows everyone, until something goes wrong. Then everyone knows everything. Emotionally, that's heavy. Financially, the low costs feel like freedom, until opportunity taps out. This is the quiet tension of rural towns with shrinking options. Less noise, less movement, and when pressure builds, it has nowhere to go. Also, why do rural towns have exactly one grocery store and it somehow closes early? You miss it by 5 minutes and suddenly dinner is a gas station negotiation. Hope you like jerky and regret. Picture yourself here. Windows down, fields stretching forever, cicadas buzzing like static. It feels peaceful, safe even. But then you hear the numbers and realize quiet doesn't mean insulated. It just means everything echoes louder. And if Osceola surprised you, the next town makes small but intense look like a competitive sport. Number 3, Globe, Arizona. Globe looks like a movie set that forgot to wrap. Old mining town, hills cut by switchback roads, copper dust baked into the sidewalks. This is the Arizona people don't Instagram. Too real, too quiet, too sunburned to care. You expect grit, you expect history. You do not expect the crime math. Here's the shift. Globe, population just over 7,000, has posted violent crime rates well above the national average, often landing in the 1,600 to 1,800 per 100,000 range in recent years. For a town this small, that's not background noise, that's a warning tone. Some grounding facts. Cost of living, below national average, especially housing. Median home prices, affordable, but appreciation is sluggish. Median rent, low with limited inventory. Job market, narrow. Healthcare, education, and what's left of mining-related work. Quality of life, scenic, slow, and quietly strained. Surprisingly, Globe's issue isn't chaos, it's isolation. Fewer resources, fewer exits. Problems linger longer when help is an hour away. Beautiful views, statistically spicy evenings. Living in Globe changes your sense of distance. Physically, everything's far. Emotionally, everything's close. When something happens, it doesn't disappear into a city, it circulates. Names get repeated, stories stick. Financially, low costs bring people in. Limited opportunity keeps them parked. That tension shows up in the numbers, not the scenery. Globe isn't unsafe all the time. It's vulnerable all the time. Big difference. But the stats don't care about nuance. Also, Arizona heat is disrespectful. It's not hot, it's personal. Your steering wheel is a threat. Your flip-flops regret your life choices. And every local says, you get used to it, which is Arizona for, we gave up. And if Globe caught you off guard, the next place proves that tiny towns can still produce big city shock. This next town doesn't look dangerous until the numbers clear their throat. Number 2, Oceana, West Virginia. Oceana feels like a place time forgot on purpose. Coal country, hills stacked on hills. One main road, a few side streets, and that Appalachian quiet that feels earned, not empty. This is the kind of town where people expect hardship, but not danger. You expect struggle. You expect resilience. You do not expect numbers that scream, here's the jolt. Oceana, population barely 1,300, has posted violent crime rates north of 4,000 per 100,000 residents in some recent reporting years. That's not just high, that's big city levels, in a town you can walk across. Some grounding facts. Cost of living, well below national average, extremely affordable. Median home prices, low, but demand is thinner than the mountain air. Median rent, cheap, limited inventory. Job market, fragile. Coal decline left a vacuum that never refilled. Quality of life, deeply communal, but stressed. Surprisingly, this isn't chaos spilling everywhere. It's intensity without insulation. When something happens in a town this small, it doesn't fade into the background. It becomes the background. When your crime rate needs a footnote explaining the population, living in Oceana compresses everything. Emotionally, there's nowhere to hide. Everyone knows. Financially, affordability feels like relief until you realize opportunity left years ago and didn't forward its address. This is what happens when isolation meets economic exhaustion. Not constant danger, but volatile moments with outsized impact. Remember Calvert's statistically exciting shed? Yeah, Oceana said, "Hold my Mountain Dew." Quick pause. 4,000 per 100,000 sounds terrifying, but that could be a handful of incidents. That's the trap. Small towns don't give you averages, they give you whiplash. Okay, back to it. Also, West Virginia roads are allergic to straight lines. Every drive feels like the road designer sneezed halfway through planning. You're not commuting, you're slaloming emotionally. And if Oceana's numbers shook you, number 1 flips the script completely because it looks normal, feels normal, and somehow ends up worse. Number 1, Elmwood Place, Ohio. Elmwood Place feels aggressively normal. 2 square miles, sidewalks, modest homes. It sits right next to Cincinnati, like a quiet neighbor who borrows sugar and returns it on time. You expect suburb rules, predictability, the kind of place crime statistics politely ignore. That's the setup. And then the data ruins it. Here's the shocker. Elmwood Place, population just over 2,000, has reported violent crime rates higher than Cincinnati in several recent years. Read that again. Not totals, rates. Grounding reality. Violent crime rate, well above national average, sometimes multiple times higher. Cost of living, low, very livable on paper. Median rent, affordable. Suburban cheap. Job market, most residents work outside the village. Quality of life, quiet, until it isn't. Surprisingly, this isn't constant danger, it's statistical exposure. Tiny population, shared borders. A few bad incidents turn into headline math. Small town charm, big city spreadsheets. Living here messes with your intuition. You hear kids playing, lawnmowers humming. Then you read the numbers and feel that mental whiplash. Emotionally, it creates distrust of your own eyes. Financially, it keeps prices low, but confidence lower. Picture it, evening light, porch fan humming. Everything feels safe until you remember safety isn't a vibe, it's a ratio. A local once put it perfectly. It's fine, just don't pretend the stats are lying. They're just loud. Also, Ohio has this talent for looking harmless while quietly stressing you out. Flat roads, gray skies, the emotional range of a spreadsheet. You're not scared, you're uneasy, which is worse. Like the video if this flipped your assumptions upside down. Subscribe, because apparently even suburbs need a survival guide now.